In the NFL, we know there comes a time to where the teams are placing the franchise tag on certain players. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the top candidates that may receive the franchise tag from their respective team. And then in today's show, we're going to talk about Maxx Crosby and why the Las Vegas Raiders should be exploring trade options for the good pass rusher. Y'all know we're going to talk about it, break it all down right after this.
Welcome to your number one spot for all NFL news and content, NFL Central.
What's going on, NFL fans? Welcome back into another episode of NFL Central, your number one spot for everything NFL. So if you tuned in, love talking that football talk, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, I know it's been a couple days. Your boy been busy with life. But nonetheless, we here to talk about some football and get this thing rolling. In the meantime, in between time. But yes, the window for teams to franchise tag players that they want to try to retain in hopes of either having that player play on a 1 year deal per se or trying to negotiate a long-term contract with said player is now open, with the deadline coming on March 3rd for those teams to go out there and try to franchise tag a said player. But I compiled a list of some of the top candidates that are likely to receive a franchise tag, and we're going to go ahead and just kick this thing off the right way. I think the most obvious candidate that could receive the franchise tag is wide receiver George Pickens with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, George Pickens last season had an outstanding season, 93 receptions for over a little bit over 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. We seen how George Pickens, went out there and performed alongside CeeDee Lamb, without CeeDee Lamb. And then there were some questionable moments towards the end of the season for George Pickens. But ultimately, he is one of those guys that is a dynamic pass catcher and can make a lot of things happen for the Dallas Cowboys offense. But the reason I think that a franchise tag is going to happen for him is simply because these guys in Dallas, they love to draw up controversy. It is also a smart business decision as well, because if you franchise tag him, you limit the opportunity of him, going out there to negotiate other deals, and you get an opportunity to allow him to play for your franchise for potentially this year or a little bit longer. But we know Jerry Jones is one of those guys that's going to drag this thing out. And hey, that's just what George Pickens has to get himself ready for. Now, if we do remember correctly, last year, Jerry Jones, Michael Parsons representation, they've drugged this thing out as long as possible until ultimately Michael Parsons was traded from the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the same representation that Michael Parsons has also represents George Pickens. So it's going to be interesting to see how both sides are able to come to terms on a long-term deal. Now, there are some reports that that the franchise tag will be about for $28 million. And if you all remember correctly, if a team elects to franchise tag a player, the yearly salary for said player will be based on the market value for their respective position. So $28 million for 1 year for George Pickens seems like it's a feasible deal. But I always said, and I've been saying it over the last few weeks, if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, we try to get a long-term deal done, but I'm not going out there and trying to give him Jamar Chase money, not even T. Higgins money, simply because the Dallas Cowboys have to game plan properly around the entire team, not just one side of the football. We know that Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and a number of other pass catchers can be dynamic and go out there and score points. The problem with the Dallas Cowboys last season was their defense. Now they're bringing in a new defensive coordinator. Now the defensive coordinator has said in a press conference that he's going to go out there and craft the system accordingly based on the players that he has and not try to force players to play not to play within their strengths. So it's just one of those things. Would I think that he'll be good for the Dallas Cowboys? Absolutely. But I don't think that you need two highly paid wide receivers to go out there and be productive if you're the Dallas Cowboys. The next person on the list is running back Breece Hall from the New York Jets. Definitely went over 1,000 yards last season through all that turmoil in New York. And why wouldn't you want to franchise tag a player like this? Just to go out there and again to have some type of advantage to come to terms on a long-term deal. Now, it's one of those things to where you look at it and say, hey, how much money do we really want to give a running back? Me personally, I feel running backs are having a resurgence in the NFL game. You look at some of the best running backs over the last few seasons, and you see that when you have a really good running back, they can be very, very valuable on a team. And one could argue that running backs could be more valuable than some wide receivers, depending on the situation. We look at Saquon Barkley in that season he had last year to go out there and help the Philadelphia Eagles capture a championship. You look at Kenneth Walker with the Seattle Seahawks this season, and yes, he had shared some reps, so you might not say that, hey, why would we go out there and funnel out a lot of money? But at the same time, you look at how Kenneth Walker was able to have his best game when it really, really mattered and was able to break the game open in the Super Bowl. So I really, really think that the gap between wide receivers and running backs, the gap between the importance or the said value between those positions, they are closing. Because one last point, if you look at teams like the Cincinnati Bengals, they have arguably the best wide receiver duo in the game. Highly paid too. No running back. Look at the offense. Look at the entire team. When you have a running back that is able to pick up yards and extend drives, that is way more feasible to the NFL game, and it allows you to do more on any given Sunday, and based on the conditions that what are going on the outside elements, and based on said pass rush when a team is attempting to pass the ball down the football field. But nonetheless, we move on. The next candidate that I have is tight end Kyle Pitts out of Atlanta. He had a career year, so shout out to him. Finishing with 88 catches, 928 yards, and 5 touchdowns, and was named a second-team All-Pro last year. But I do think that those guys down in Atlanta will try to retain and hold on to Kyle Pitts. I think that when he was able to really get it going this season, I think that's somebody you really, really can lean on. And we talked about running backs. Look at B. John Robinson in that offense, helping open things up for the others. Now, one could argue maybe he only did this because he was in a contract year, which may hold some truth. But I think that if you want to get a long-term deal done, the best way to do it is to go ahead and franchise tag Kyle Pitts. And if you can get something done, you hold on to a young player like that, and it will be best, and it will behoove him to try to stick around, and hopefully Kevin Stefanski can go out there and make them competitors in the NFC South. The last player I want to bring up is Daniel Jones. Now, this one is a little bit weird for me, not even going to hold you, but what other options do the Indianapolis Colts have on the docket? You might have to franchise tag Daniel Jones, or depending on the market, you might be able to stand back and let the bidding start and just see, hey, or place a transition tag on him and let somebody make him an offer. But I don't think the Indianapolis Colts have a lot of options here. Anthony Richardson, he's a guy that I believe they have given up on. That's just my personal opinion. You have Riley Leonard, who last year you chucked to the side to bring in Phillip Rivers. Are you going to give him an opportunity? We shall see. It seems like that's the way that they want to go in Indy. But hey, we'll see what happens with that. Me personally, it's a question mark for the Daniel Jones franchise tag, simply because he's coming back off an injury. And then when games started to matter just a little bit more in November, December, before he got hurt, coming out of their bye week, Daniel Jones was not good. It's not good. What other options do they have, though, in Indy? Is the biggest question. Do you go out there and you see if you can get a Kyler Murray from the Arizona Cardinals? Do you run with Riley Leonard? They got some tough decisions to make in Indy. Y'all let me know how y'all feeling about Daniel Jones. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's not going to be franchise tagged. That's just, I'm going to go out there and say it and just so I can take a position on that. But I believe he could be a candidate for the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know. I'm not going to say that he is going to be franchise tag. You let me know how you feel about that one. That one was a question mark for me. But hey, now we move on to talk about Maxx Crosby and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders, they're in a weird situation. When you talk about Maxx Crosby, definitely have him as one of the better edge rushers in the league. To me, top 5, however you want to dice it up, he's at least top 5 edge rusher in the NFL, in my opinion. If you have him outside of the top 5, that's your opinion. I'm not here to argue with that as long as you don't have him out of the top 10. Now, when you talk about the current rumors and stuff and things circulating, and there's one side that has the rumor of Maxx Crosby should want to get traded, or Maxx Crosby wants to get traded. And then on the other side, you have the Vegas Raiders wanting to hold on to a player like Maxx Crosby. Here's my position. The Las Vegas Raiders should absolutely be looking to trade Maxx Crosby. Here's why. Because what? You're only going to get a couple more years out of Maxx Crosby, number one. Number two, this team is not 2 years away from competing for a championship. Can they improve over the next 2 years? Absolutely. But we have to think about the division that they're in. We have to think about the offensive line they need to improve. We have to think about the defensive backfield that they have to improve. We have to think about the pass catchers that they have to improve. They have so much work that they have to do that by the time Maxx Crosby hits 31, 32, he is not going to be at this current level, at least in my opinion. So for the Las Vegas Raiders, you absolutely have to go out there and get draft capital to bring players in that fits the timeline that much more. You have to take as many shots or many bites at the apple to go out there and acquire first round talent. Now, there's a rumor out there that the Las Vegas Raiders, they don't want to trade Maxx Crosby, but they will entertain a deal that is Micah Parsons like, which was 2 first round picks and a player that they feel can fit in with what they're trying to do. The rumor trade for Maxx Crosby right now is Maxx Crosby in the 5th goes to Chicago. The Chicago Bears gives the Raiders a first, and the Raiders get a DJ Moore. It sounds nice, but then again, DJ Moore, his age, doesn't necessarily line up. Would it be good for both sides? I believe so, because you give a number 1 wide receiver to Fernando Mendoza if he's drafted there. He will have Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty in the backfield, which are a couple weapons for him. And then you have additional draft capital that you can hand over to the Las Vegas Raiders. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that trade is not happening. If it happens, I'll come out here and say I was wrong. But I don't believe it's going to happen because I think that the Chicago Bears front office will value draft picks more so now, entering the next stages of trying to be competitive in the North, because they have a number of contracts that they have coming up on the books. And they already have some questionable contracts that's already on the books. You got to think about right tackle Darnell Wright. You have to talk about wide receiver Rome Odunze. You have to talk about Caleb Williams becoming eligible for extension after this upcoming season. You have to think about bad contracts on the books that you might have to go out there and cut ties with, which will free open some money, but not particular for this season, in Dayo Ndingbo and Grady Jarrett. So it's a sticky situation. Can it happen? Absolutely. Do I believe it happens? No, I do not believe Maxx Crosby will be traded to the Chicago Bears at least this season. That's just my position, but I do think the Vegas Raiders should be fielding offers from anybody to see if you can get the deal that you want. Another thing to throw into the mix is that Maxx Crosby is not really banging on the table to get out of Vegas. That's one thing. But if you're a GM, you have to say screw all of that if you have some foresight, and you have to go out there and make it happen. Those are the good GMs. The good GMs have foresight and understand where they are to move on. If you're the Cleveland Browns, one could argue, instead of holding on to Myles Garrett and making him the highest paid defensive player in the league before Micah Parsons, you arguably could have got 3 first-round picks for him and help reshape the team. Now, they're not bad all the way in Cleveland. There is a chance that Todd Monken can go out there and do a couple good things for them. However, you still have things you need to do. Your wide receiver group, it's not that good. Your defense, they got some players on there, and subtracting Myles Garrett would have been a hit, but with all that additional capital would have gotten you years of bringing in players after players after players. So if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, yes, you should be trying to fight for those 2 first-round picks. You should be trying to go out there and get additional capital with a number of players. You should be trying to do that so you can have years, consecutive years of bringing in players after players. So now you have an influx of talent versus having a deficiency of talent like you currently do. It's going to be a tall task for guys like Clint Kubiak. It's going to be a tall task for guys in the front office. I think they should absolutely explore the option before the value drops, because right now the value is high. If you wait another year, it's going to go down. If you wait another year, it's going to go down. Right now, while the iron is hot, you have to strike gold. We know there's a link between the Raiders and the Bears, but that is not the only team that will be interested in getting a Maxx Crosby. So you got to strike while the iron is hot. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. You let me know your thoughts on the Maxx Crosby stuff. If you were the GM, will you be shopping around Maxx Crosby? Why or why not? Let me know down in the box below. But again, that is it for me today. I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all always love football. Let me hear your thoughts down below. Y'all on the next one for sure. Peace.
This has